Good morning, beautiful. Today, I bought my first pair of reading glasses. Makes me feel kind of old, but you know what? That's probably fitting because this video is probably going to make me sound like a grumpy old man. Because today, I want to talk to you about the myth of constructive criticism. Now get off my lawn! Larry here with Southern Exposure, information and inspiration for the amateur photographer. Now, there are a lot of online forums dedicated to the field of photography, from dedicated sites like F-Stoppers and Petapixel to Facebook groups that focus on specific genres of photography, certain regions, or just photography in general. For the most part, these communities can be very helpful for the amateur photographer, but there's one common aspect to these forums that I think is toxic and is the biggest threat to your creativity, inspiration, and motivation to create images. I'm referring, of course, to the ubiquitous constructive criticism post. What I see so often in these posts is a photographer, usually an amateur or a beginner, will post a photo only to have it absolutely ripped to shreds in the comments. People will hammer on everything from the lens choice to the lighting to the editing to how the model looks, you name it. Most of this feedback is very negative, and the worst part is the feedback is given whether it's asked for or not. This is clearly not constructive criticism. The most obvious problem I have with these posts is they're simply not helpful. They're snarky jabs that offer no insight on how the photographer might improve. Their purpose is not to help the photographer. The purpose is to make the commenter feel like an expert by pointing out what they perceive as shortcomings in someone else's art. And even if suggestions are made on how the picture might be improved, these suggestions are pretty much useless for two reasons. First, you have no idea who this person is offering you advice. They might have less experience in photography than you do. They may have never even picked up a camera before in their life. Without researching each and every commenter on your photo, you have no idea whether you're listening to actual credible advice or not. And who has time for that? Second, the helpful commenter offering forth their sage wisdom has no idea what your intention was with the shot. They may be criticizing you on something that you intended to include in the shot, like motion blur or harsh lighting for artistic impact. They're simply spitting out a surface-level evaluation based on a few seconds of looking at your photo on their monitor or on their phone. They have something to say about everyone else's art, but their evaluations are really more like snap judgments that don't take into account the intentions of the photographer or their experience level. A mile wide and an inch deep. But the biggest problem I have with constructive criticism and why I call it toxic is that over time it can have a negative impact on your creativity and your motivation to create more images. It will erode your confidence and cause you to start second-guessing all of your decisions. This is no good because photography is about taking risks, trying new things, and learning what looks good to you. When I first started photography, I was 16 years old. I had a Pentax 35mm film camera and some borrowed lenses. One afternoon, I decided to take some pictures of my girlfriend. When I got the prints back, there was one that I really liked, so I had an enlargement made and got it framed. I decided to show it to my uncle, who was also into photography as a hobby. When he looked at the picture, his only reaction was, "You should have held the camera vertically and never put your subject in the center of the frame." Now, his points were valid. Those are two things that probably would have improved that photo. But I was a beginner, and I was very proud of the fact that I had purposely achieved a shallow depth of field, had nailed the exposure, and had captured a very genuine-looking facial expression in a portrait. When I heard his evaluation, my heart sank. It sucked all the wind out of my sails, and that crisis of confidence in my beginning stages really slowed my development as a photographer. Don't worry, I never held this against my uncle. I mean, his points were valid, and I know that his intention was only to help me improve. But that just wasn't what I needed at that point in my development. But I did learn something very valuable from that experience, and it had nothing to do with composition. One of the greatest things about being an amateur photographer, and one of the main reasons why I've never tried to sell my services, is that as amateur photographers, you and I don't have to please anyone but ourselves. There are no client expectations, there are no guidelines. The only obligation you have as an amateur photographer is to make the image that you wanted to make. This still leaves the question, how do I improve my photography? First and foremost, practice. Famous street photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson said, "Your first 10,000 photographs are your worst." Take more pictures and evaluate them yourself. Look at the images critically. If a picture doesn't turn out the way that you wanted it to, try to figure out why. Maybe the exposure is off. Maybe there's too many distracting elements within the frame. But look at the picture and try to figure out what it is that went wrong. Look at other photographers' work and try to decide what it is specifically that you like about a particular photograph. If you want someone else's input, find a fellow photographer that you can trust and ask for their feedback one-on-one. This way you can have a dialogue with them. You can explain what your intention was with the shot, and they can offer specific guidelines on how you can better achieve that goal. Finally, if you're really stuck and you need to post an image online to get some feedback, ask very specific questions about what it is that you want to improve. Hopefully you'll get better results that way. If you found this video helpful or inspiring, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. After that, go out, take pictures, and have fun doing it. I think I'm going to do some light reading.